Okay, so it's a couple of days after Father's Day, and I mentioned in the Father's Day video, the first one, I mentioned, in the pre-time skip one, I mentioned, my slight theory about Kuzan or Aokiji being Robin's father. I'm aware of the fact that there are a few things that make this a little hard to believe, and I will go over them, but I just wanted to go over some of my ideas for why it's a possibility, and then I'll basically disprove myself at the end by basically saying, and this one thing kind of makes that hard to happen, but I just wanted to talk about it. There's a theory out there that that Roger is Robin's father, and that him and Olivia met, blah, 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 or that Dragon is Robin's father, and that they met, blah, 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 same idea. Both of those are a possibility. We know that Roger was traveling the world and everything. Robin was born, 30 years ago at the moment in the timeline, because she's 30 years old post-time skip. And Roger was still traveling the world 30 years ago. It would have been probably on the cusp of when he found out that he was sick, but he still would have been traveling around that same time frame. They would have been exploring, and, we know that they didn't just explore the Grand Line once, and they probably also sailed around to all of these other islands and everything. We know that they visit, O'Hara is in the West Blue, of course, which is where, of course, both Robin and Olivia are from. I believe it's also Shanks is from the West Blue too. Or Shanks from the South Blue, one of the two. But we know that they traveled to like all of the other blues and everything like that because they had, the Oro Jackson, so they could sail easily in and out of the Grand Line, both halves of it. They were friends with Neptune, so they could go through Fishman Island if they needed to. They'd probably gone up or down, Reverse Mountain a couple of times, by this point. They traveled a lot. Dragon, since we don't know as much about Dragon's past, the earliest that we kind of know about Dragon's past is, of course, when he was at Roger's execution. That spurred him to then go and make the Revolutionary Army. We don't know that much about Dragon's past beyond that. We know that he had Luffy several years later, and then that he either left Luffy on, at Fuchsia Village, or just left Luffy with Garp, one of the two. Yeah. But the one that I wanted to talk about in this, for who I kind of think could be Robin's father, or would be okay if he is Robin's father, is Kuzan, or Aokiji. I'll probably go back and forth between those two names at the moment, because I was introduced to him as Aokiji, because that's, of course, what he was called when we were first introduced to him back at Long Ring Longland, or the Foxy Returns arc in the anime. I know I read that arc. I know I read the Foxy arc, the Long Ring Longland arc, but I think I actually read it before I actually saw it. I think. I don't remember, but introduced to him that way. But a little bit that we know about Aokiji's past is Oda drew him at one point as a kid, and he looks a little bit like a ruffian, like a ne'er-do-well, like this person that's just going to cause trouble and everything. We know that he joined the Marines when he was 19 years old, and he ended up being under the tutelage of Zephyr, who is, of course, just a very great Marine admiral and everything, that ended up becoming an instructor and everything. And even though he joined the Marines, Kuzan stated that he never held the world government in high esteem to begin with. It looks like he grew up as kind of a poor kid, so we know he grew up in the South Blue, which pretty much that in and of itself already makes it a lot harder for, Kuzan to be Robin's father, because, a 19-year-old traveling around that's not a pirate and is not a Marine, is a little bit harder to be able to explain how he gets from the South Blue to the West Blue, over the red line. That kind of already messes with this theory, but for the moment, we are going to ignore that. And we know that Robin would have, because Aokiji is currently 49 years old in the storyline. That means that he was, 19 when Robin was born. So by that logic, it could have been that, he was a Marine and he entered training and everything, and then he ended up getting shipped off to wherever, and that may ended up being that he ended up in the West Blue. And it may have ended up being that he ended up interacting with Olvia when she was out on an expedition. We don't know. The only time that we know that Olvia actually did leave on an expedition was when it came to, Olvia left when Robin was about 2 years old. Olvia was about 25 when Robin was born. So there is a little bit of an age gap there between Olvia and Aokiji. But not like that's a huge thing in One Piece when it comes to age gaps necessarily. I think there is an age gap between Capone and Chiffon. And I don't remember if there's an age gap between Praline and Aladdin. And there's like a 3 or 4 year age gap between like Sanji and Pudding, because Sanji is currently 21 years old, and I think Pudding was like 16. So there's like a 5 year age gap there. So it's not like age gaps are necessarily that huge of a thing in One Piece. But we know that Robin's father, supposedly, according to what is said to Olvia when she leaves to go on her expedition and leaves her daughter with her sister. Bad idea. That is a very bad idea. Your sister is a bitch. And an abusive one at that. But they mentioned that like, oh, Olvia's husband had been someone that had been, an archaeologist as well. That may have just been a cover story to protect the fact that her child's father may have been a Marine, since what they were doing was kind of illegal in regards to wanting to study the poneglyphs. And, it may have been that Aokiji may not have known that Robin was his daughter. It may have been that, like, he had this night of passion with Olvia, and then, or a couple of nights of passion, depending on wherever they ended up. They may have been drunk. We don't know. And, he may not have known 100% who she was, and then several years later, he sees her wanted poster. And in the wanted poster, he's like, oh, that's that woman that I, spent that time with or whatever. Or it may have been that they met before he became a Marine, and he may have, and somehow via, I don't know, traveling, he was kind of a menace as a kid is what it looks like. So it may have been he found his way off of his home island in the South Blue and maybe somehow made his way to the West Blue. Or Olvia may have traveled outside of the West Blue and then traveled back to the West Blue, depending on what type of an expedition she was doing, or other expeditions. I mean, she's 25 when she has Robin. She seems to have been an archaeologist a fair amount of her life. She grew up on that island. She was very close with Clover and everything. So it may have been that, over the course of time, Olvia may have gone on several expeditions over the years to maybe not necessarily gather information about the poneglyphs, but gather information about like other history or other cultures. And then they ended up going to do the poneglyph expedition. And it may have been they traveled around because it's like there's not just history that they want to learn about in the West Blue. There's also other history they want to learn about in other areas of the world. And it may have been that, Olvia ended up in the South Blue with some of the other archaeologists that she was on a mission, that she was on a, expedition with. And, they were archaeologists that seemed to be the government seemed to be somewhat okay with them. So it may have been that they had access, maybe not necessarily to the, the red ports directly, but, maybe they were able to sail, through Fishman Island, or something along those lines, or, via other types of ships, they were able to make their way there. Don't 100% know about that. We know that the warlords have access to the gondolas, to the, at the Red Port and everything, and that obviously the Marines do as well. But, and they could have gone up the up through the, up through Reverse Mountain as well. That's also a possibility. And then eventually somehow ended up in the West Blue or in the South Blue or something. And then she may have met Aokiji there. There's a lot of things that have to go into, well, this could have happened and that could have happened. So I'm very aware that this is kind of a little more of an outlandish theory as opposed to, oh, Roger is Robin's father, or even Dragon necessarily. The Dragon one is kind of along the same lines, except that if I remember correctly, the well, the East Blue and the West Blue do not border each other, obviously. And that would still be like, Dragon would have still had to have found a way to get to Ohara, because he may not have, that's 30 years ago. He may have still been, we don't know what Dragon was. He may have been a Marine at that point in time. He may have been he could have been off wandering. We don't know. But, Olvia had Robin when she was 25. We know this. Robin is 2 when Olvia leaves, so Olvia is 27. When Olvia returns to Ohara, Robin is, of course, 8 years old at the time of the Buster call. Olvia is 33 when she dies. Supposedly dies, same thing with her and Salt. I don't want them to be dead, but it has been, 22 years at this point in time. We don't know if we're ever going to see them again. Beyond in like flashbacks from Robin or something, or like maybe Aokiji pops up again and says something. Hey, you want to hear some stories about Saul? But of course what ends up happening is, Olvia returns to, Ohara, and her and Robin end up meeting for the first time since Robin was 2, and Olvia is gonna get killed anyway by the world government and everything, and they have CP9 there, and they have Spondine, who's an idiot. Well, Spondum is an idiot. Spondine at least seems to be somewhat capable of doing his job. Somewhat capable. He's at least better at it than his son, which is not saying much, but still. But what ends up happening is, of course, Saul is, of course, there on the island. He became friends with Olvia and helped her escape the Marines, and he helps, Olvia tells him to take Robin and run, which, of course, I went over in the Mother's Day video, and, of course, is very obvious when it comes to, Robin's history. And, Saul takes Robin and tries to get her to the coast, and this is when they run into Aokiji, or Kuzan. He's a vice admiral at this point in time. He was also in the Ed War. He was in the Ed War when he was 22, which is the Ed War that ends up resulting in the big storm at the war between the Roger pirates and the Golden Lion pirates, Shiki's crew and such. It was 3 years before Roger's death. Kuzan was in Marineford, and was there and saw with Garp and Saul and Sakazuki, who had become Akainu and Suru and such, and they kind of end up hearing about the that war between the Ed War between those two pirate crews. But of course, when we get to the Buster Call, of course we have it that Kuzan was one of the 5 vice admirals that has to take part in the Buster Call, because he's one of the 5 vice admirals that's around there at the time. Sakazuki is, of course, one of the other ones that's there. And what ends up happening is, Kuzan ended up on the island, and he had kind of seen, I think he'd seen that Sakazuki had, blown up one of the ships that had the civilians on it, because they were at least trying to evacuate the civilians. And of course, his answer for why he blew it up was the fact of there could have been archaeologists on that ship. They could be trying to escape, hide amongst the civilians. We have to do what the world government tells us to do, and this is justice. That absolute justice, which is where Kuzan's justice starts to shift more into lazy justice as opposed to like that similar type of justice. Admittedly, Kuzan's justice does seem to be something that's a little bit closer to like Garp's justice. And Kuzan also has quite a bit of admiration for Garp, and the fact that he's, very impressed whenever Garp turns down promotion after promotion after promotion, because, by all rights, Garp could be an admiral. Could have been an admiral for probably most of Luffy's life. If not all of Luffy's life. But Garp, of course, just wanted to stay as a vice admiral, because then he wouldn't be under the direct thumb of the celestial dragons, of the Gorosei. But of course, what ends up happening is, Aokiji and, Kuzan ends up on the island, and he sees Saul, and he sees that Saul has Robin. He uses his devil fruit powers to freeze Saul, and he sees how much Saul is trying to help Robin, and then him and Robin talk. And he, he's like, basically like, this island's gonna get destroyed. You're a kid. Looks at Saul's, giant frozen body. Saul was my friend. I'm gonna let you go. And he makes like, he gets her in a boat, and he makes her like this ice kind of, corridor thing that she can sail down, that'll, lead her out of Ohara and lead her away from the ships and everything. She's just a little dinghy that no one's gonna pay any attention to. And, just like follow this line. The other thing about Kuzan is we don't know exactly when he got his powers. He could have got his powers when he was a kid. He could have eaten the, what's it called, the hee fruit or whatever it is, the ice fruit. He could have eaten that. Or no, it's the chili fruit. Sorry, chili fruit. He could have eaten that when he was a kid. He doesn't look like he necessarily had a whole lot of food when he was a kid. He looks like he's a ruffian, so he may have found a devil fruit and then eaten it, and then used that power. Or again, he could have gotten that power when he was in the Marines. And we also see he likes to ride around on a bicycle on the ice, on the water, which I just find funny. I'm just like, I guess that's one way to get around and kind of avoid the tracks of the world government. Maybe he did that beforehand. Maybe that would have been like how he, admittedly that would still involve him having to like scale the red line, but makes mobility a little bit more easy if you don't have to worry so much about, oh, well, how am I going to get there? It's ice pathway. Where's my bike? Pedal, pedal, pedal. That's just funny. I just will always find that funny. But, he lets Robin go. And then, he does tell her that if you ever do anything, if you do bad stuff, I will find you. I will be the enemy that will find you. And, catch you and then, throw you in an impel down or wherever it is. And, of course, then he also freezes Spondine's rudder on his ship to help get, so Robin could get away better. And then, of course, she ends up, being wanted, Robin, Nico Robin, the demon child and everything, the demon of Ohara or whatever, on the run for 20 years. And then she probably hears things about Aokiji over the years, how he goes from being Kuzan to being proclaimed Aokiji, and he's an admiral and everything. And then, of course, the next time that Robin interacts with him is, of course, at Long Ring Longland, or Foxy Returns, depending on, anime, manga. Well, it'll be manga for the Long Ring Longland, anime for the Foxy Returns. But she interacts with him there on the island, and she is just, this is one of the first times where we see Robin extremely afraid. Yeah, she was a little bit afraid when she had to deal with, when she had to deal with Crocodile, when he betrayed her, when he stabbed her and poisoned her and everything. But then she still survived. But Robin at that point had seemed okay to die, and then, she never really seemed extremely afraid when they were in Skypiea. She fought against, I think it was Yama, she fought against and beat the ever-living crap out of him, as he deserved, and different things like that. But this time when she sees Aokiji, she is just filled with so much fear and everything. And he tracked her there, and he kind of waited for them while they were fighting, doing the Davy back fight with Foxy. And, what ends up happening, and, he's waiting there, and Robin just kind of, freaks out and just, like, falls on the ground, and she's probably, like, shaking in fear because it's been 20 years since she's seen him, and she's been through a lot, she's grown, but in that moment, she turned back into this little girl that had, just watched her mother basically die, just watched this man freeze her only friend that wasn't an archaeologist, and then he let her go, but said, you do something wrong, I will find you. And then he let her go. And it's one of the things is that it said that he let her go then back on Ohara because of Saul. It could have also been, in the theory, that, he's her father, that he saw that she was Olvia's daughter. He saw, her name's Nico Robin. He saw that she was Olvia's daughter. She looked just like him. He may have put 2 and 2 together of she would have been around the right age, and he figured that, oh, she's my daughter too. Okay. And then he lets her go because he can't bring himself. First of all, he's not really the type that can bring himself to kill a child. Second of all, it's like, you want that in an admiral, don't talk to Aokiji. He'll do that in an instant. It's like, oh, this child could do something horrible. Drop some magma all over it. What child? Kuzan is just like, steps in front of the child, tells it, run that way. Makes like an ice version of the child, steps out of the way. There, I froze it. He doesn't seem to be that type of pirate, or that type of, well, he's not a pirate. Well, he could be a pirate right now in the current timeline, because we think he went to go work with Whitebeard, or with the Blackbeard, and he could be undercover there. I really hope that he's undercover, because I like him. But he, of course, when they're at Long Ring Longland, he demonstrates his power. He freezes this, whatever it's called, the Master of the Ocean, Master of Waters, or whatever it's called. He freezes this giant Sea King, and then allows, Tangent, who's, the no bad guy on Long Ring Longland, to then, go travel over so he can go catch up with his family after being on his stilts for so long, which is just funny. And he, can go and travel and catch up with them. But then we also have, he demonstrates that power. He could have literally just, as soon as Tangent left, he could have literally just, touched the ground and then froze all of the Straw Hats and their ship. And then he could have just easily walked around, put handcuffs on all of them, put the, sea prism stone cuffs on them, or just kept them frozen and then called the rest of the Marines and said, hey, I got the Straw Hat Pirates here. I got Nico Robin here. You want to come and pick him up? He could have very easily done that. Yes, he does freeze Robin, but he also gives kind of Robin and the rest of the crew a warning. He's basically like, anything that ever follows this woman, any organization that she's ever joined, has been destroyed, has fallen apart. And it's always because of her. And, and he starts to see, the devotion that the crew already have to her, even though they've only had her on the crew for maybe a couple of weeks at this point in time. However long it took to sail from, Alabasta to Jaya, and then Jaya up to, Jaya all the way up to, Skypiea, and then, that whole adventure, and then back down and everything. And then, when they land, we don't really see too much else of that. But, they're already, and then, of course, they dealt with the Foxy arc, of course, the Davy back fight. And then, of course, he's already seeing this kind of devotion that seems a little bit different than normal. And then, of course, then we have, he lets them go. He does freeze Luffy, and then he, lets them, he does let them go. And then, of course, the crew defrosts Robin, and they defrost Luffy, and then they head to Water 7. Aokiji did tell Spondam that, oh, Robin is on her way, Nico Robin is on her way to Water 7. She's with the Straw Hats. And, maybe you can work that into your plan that you have there with, the, with CP9 and everything. He, tells this to Spondam, and then, he's supposedly the one that gave, Spondam the golden Den Den Mushi, which I'm just like, really? You've seen what Buster Calls can do. But then again, of course, if it is also the fact that he is her father, it could be the fact that he's like, well, if I let her, if I tell the government to do this, I can't let them think that I have any form of sympathy for her. If I let them get her, let CP9 get her by, threatening the Straw Hats, if you come with us and help us with what we need to get from Iceberg and Frankie and everything, then, we'll allow your crew to leave. If not, we'll Buster Call them. And, Robin agrees. And, in all honesty, she was perfectly fine with being on the, being on the sea train all the way back there. And what really did change her, what changed her mind, of course, was when she sees her friends there, all the Straw Hats, at Ennis Lobby, all ready to fight for her and everything. And then, of course, then she has her, the whole flashback, and then it's, is I want to live. I want to live. I want to keep sailing and everything. And of course, that's when we see that shift in Robin, because before then, all she wanted to do was die. She just wanted to be left alone. She wanted to take whatever punishment this was going to be and everything, And, if she was Aokiji's daughter, he probably could have found some ways to, like, pull a few little strings here and there in the Marines to get at that, okay, yeah, she's in Impel Down. She has Sea Prism Stone handcuffs on her, or, like bracelets or something like that can negate her power so she can't use it. But, give her nice rooms, give her food, give her stuff so she can write down any of the history stuff that she needs to, so that way they can have her translate things, translate stuff from poneglyphs and things like that. Keep her, she's still doing what she's supposed to. Doesn't mean that they may not still torture her every now and then if she starts being, not antisocial, but, unwilling to help. But he might be able to pull a few strings to get that taken care of. He still can't reveal anything, but, And then, of course, at the end of the Ennis Lobby arc, when the Straw Hats are escaping, the crew, the ship that he's on says, well, do you want us to chase after them? And he's like, no, they passed this. He's like, no, they passed my test beyond my expectations and everything. Don't pursue them and everything. They've already, the Marines have already suffered enough casualties and everything already, and it's, we have a complete defeat going on around us right now with the fact that the Buster Call failed to get the Straw Hats. And then we have the post-Ennis Lobby arc, where, all the Straw Hats are having this big party and everything, and where, Aokiji shows up and Robin is there, and they end up talking, they're on the other sides of the wall from each other, and he's like, I never thought that I would see you actually find a place where you belong. I never, basically type of thing. I was like, you've been on the run for 20 years, living as a rogue. And, he didn't expect CP9 to lose the Straw Hats, of course, but he asked her, why didn't you run? And she's like, she doesn't want to see them die. She doesn't want to die anymore, and she doesn't want to see the Straw Hats die. And, he bids her farewell, and I guess kind of a way of wishing her good luck or whatever. Doesn't mean he may still not try to find a way to try to capture her, or not like he's going to stop the Marines from capturing her, but still. But what ends up happening is, of course, then, it seems like he maybe messed a little bit to get, like, the Frankie family, the Frankie family don't get bounties. The rest of the Straw Hats do. Frankie does, but the rest of them don't. All the Frankie family don't. And, Aokiji then, like, gets, takes a ride on Garp's ship back to Marine headquarters, and he's like, because using his bike is such a bother. I'm just like, okay, yeah, no, that's funny. That's funny. He's like, no, I don't want to use my bike. I'll just hitch a ride back with Garp. It's fine. Ride back with Garp. Garp, these are my two apprentices. This is Kobe. This is Helmeppo. Kobe has a little more promise, but Helmeppo's not bad. Aokiji. I'm gonna go sleep now. Just like wanders off to go sleep. Kobe, is that really an admiral? Garp, yes. Okay. And then we do have, there's more stuff that happens, of course, with Aokiji, but it doesn't really, pre-time skip, he's, of course, at the Marineford War. He, works with the other admirals to try to fight against the Whitebeard pirates and, their allies. And then, of course, Luffy and the rest of the prisoners from Impel Down show up and everything. He, of course, is there. And he kind of mentions his admiration for Garp at this point in time. But then we cut to post-time skip. Now, the first time that we see Aokiji post time skip, technically, is in film Z. Technically, yeah. I know the movies are not canon, but I still like film Z. I like all of the movies that I've seen. I love Strong World, Film Z, Gold is fun, Stampede was fun, um, as I mentioned before. But we get to Film Z, and the crew interact with Aokiji. He meets Luffy and Zoro and Sanji and Brook at like the spas on the island, and they see all the injuries that he accrued in his fight with Akainu to determine who would become fleet admiral. He's missing a leg and he regrows that and everything. And I love the fact that like Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji instantly know, of course, who he is. Brook is just like, who's he? I like his fluffy hair. Who is he? He's tall like me. And like, so because Brook has not interacted with him, and it's probably not like Brook and Robin spent a whole lot of time sitting on the ship discussing their horrible pasts. It's like, Robin, well, I interacted with this man. His name is Aokiji. He can turn things, he can freeze things. I met him when I was a kid, and then I met him 20 years later. It's not like that. But like he does help the Straw Hats. He tells them what's going on with Zephyr. He tells them some about Zephyr's past. He even tries to stop Zephyr from going after them, to try to get the Zephyr to stop. And then we do have a moment there also where he does end up seeing where him and Robin kind of interact again. Robin still is very shocked to see him, of course, but she doesn't seem to be as scared of him as she was back when we first saw them interact during Long Ring Longland. And he gives them more advice, more this is what's going on with Zephyr, this is why he did this is why he did this, and everything. And he doesn't really do too much with that. He does help save a few people when they're trying to leave the spa island, stops them from being hit by the magma that comes up. And then he does end up also showing up at the final battle after Luffy and Zephyr end up attacking or finish their battle. He does freeze a ton of the Dynastones, these stones that when exposed to air or something will like explode and act like a nuclear bomb, because Zephyr's plan is to kind of blow up the new world to destroy the One Piece. Because does the One Piece exist because of pirates, or do pirates exist because of the One Piece? But given that the One Piece is kind of an island, is Laugh Tale, it's kind of there anyway. And pirates were around, for a long time. This current era, and Roger's era, and Rox's era before then. Aokiji might know about Rox. Rox was probably still around when like Aokiji was a kid, because that was like 39 years ago. And maybe Aokiji kind of knew about him, or even just after like Aokiji was still grown up and everything, he may have still heard about different things like that, or like former Rox crew member Big Mom, or Kaido, or Shiki, or whatever, hearing about that like in the newspaper, or over the. Do they have radio in the One Piece world? I guess it would be like snail radio, but like I guess maybe they have radio. I don't know. But so he's there and everything, and he helps them, and he ends up kind of helping the Straw Hats escape a little bit at that point in Film Z. But then we get back into canon. He shows up at the end of Punk Hazard, and he prevents Doflamingo from killing Smoker, which is a good thing. And then Smoker and Aokiji talk for a little bit, about the fact that the Straw Hats had been here and everything. One of the reasons also that like Aokiji can play up letting the Straw Hats go on Long Ring Longland is that, oh, well, they took care of their crocodile problem in Alabasta. Because I would think out of all of the warlords, I would assume that there would be some that Aokiji might be okay with. Like, I don't think he'd be okay with crocodile, and I don't think he'd be okay with I don't think he's okay with Doflamingo. maybe Hancock, but he probably doesn't care that much for like Moria. Mihawk you might be okay with. Same thing with like Jinbei, because like the Sun Pirates don't really seem to be the ones that are go around and like raid the pirate ship, raid marine vessels or cargo ships or things like that. They mostly just seem to be back down in Fishman Island at this point in time, or disbanded to a degree with like Arlong going off and doing his own thing. But Aokiji is one of the Marines that is able to be like, no, there are good pirates, there are bad pirates, yes, but there are some good pirates, and there are good Marines, but there are also bad Marines. And, he's kind of the one that can see through that. And also, of course, he says at one point, justice, depends on where you're standing. Because, if you're a Celestial Dragon, or one of the Gorosei, or something along those lines, justice is whatever you say it is. Or if you're Im, not that Aokiji probably knows about Im, but like, he knows about that stuff. And, if you're a Marine, oh, this pirate's bad, but, oh, like with Smoker and Tashigi, oh, these pirates actually technically didn't hurt anybody. They actually tried to, stop this thing from happening. Or they helped us capture this person, or whatever the case may be. Or like all the G5 guys, how they now kind of, how they kind of look at the Straw Hats now that, not all pirates are bad. It's that, not all pirates are bad, not all Marines are good, and then you have the revolutionaries thrown in there, and then you have, things like that. Out of all the Yonko, Aokiji is probably kind of okay with Shanks. Maybe they interacted at some point. Maybe before, like, Shanks became a Yonko. Maybe they interacted then. I don't know. Maybe they fought and Aokiji was just like, eh. Okay, I'll just say that, I fought you and I couldn't beat you. So you go on your way and I'm gonna head back on my bike. They just leaves. But the most recent thing, of course, that we know about Aokiji is that he is currently an ally of the Blackbeard Pirates. And other than that, we don't know anything else about what's going on. Aokiji could be a member of SWORD, the way that Drake and Kobe are. But we don't know anything beyond that. He could be, he could not. There's the whole theory of like, oh, had Akainu lost, then, he would have gone off and everything. I don't think Akainu would have helped the Straw Hats try to stop Zed, and I don't think, Akainu may have been willing to, like, protect Aokiji, or protect Smoker from Doflamingo, but I don't know. But yeah, basically the big flaw in the idea is that, he is old enough to be Robin's father. He's 19 when she's born. And, he has black hair, same thing that she does. But the big flaw in the thing is that, well, he's from the South Blue and they're from the West Blue. And you can't, there's a giant wall there and you can't get over the wall very easily. So it's a possibility, and it may be, it may be that Robin's father is never revealed, or it may be revealed that it is Dragon, or that it is Roger, or that it's just someone else. The other archaeologists had said that, oh, Robin's father had been, someone that shared their ideals, had maybe been another archaeologist or someone that shared their ideals. Could happen. Could have just been he was a random archaeologist that, we get a flashback of him and, oh, he just, flashback has black hair, and that explains why Robin has black hair as opposed to white hair like her mother. The main thing is, I think it would be okay if Aokiji was her father. You'd have to do some explaining there in regards to, how him and Olvia, how they met in the first place and stuff like that. But, I mean, he did rise through the ranks rather quickly. I mean, he went from being, just starting out in the Marines at 19, which seems to be a little bit older than most of the people seem to join the Marines, because Kobe and Himeper joined when they were quite a bit younger. And then we had Tashigi seemed to have joined the Marines a little while beforehand, before we, had been with the Marines for a little while before we meet her at Logtown. But we don't see, there's no specific age for when you have to join the Marines. I mean, obviously with like Fujitora and Green Bull, they came in with like the World Military Draft. They weren't Marines beforehand. They joined then. And I think all three of the original admirals kind of joined around the same time frame. And as I said, it could have been that Aokiji that Kuzan had his devil fruit power before he joined the Marines. He may not have had a lot of respect for the Marines at the time, and he probably still kind of doesn't. Some Marines, yes, like he would respect Smoker and Garp, and probably Suru, and even Sengoku to a degree. But there's probably quite a few other Marines, like, Akainu, and some others that he probably doesn't respect. Other Marines that are just doing it for the glory, or just because they want to have a reason to kill people type of a thing, or they don't actually care about the fact of, no, these pirates actually technically haven't done anything wrong. We're just calling them pirates. Kind of like, just like things like that. They're deemed pirates because of this reason. Kind of like with the Nox Expedition Party, that ended up becoming the Nox Pirates, with Pedro and, Zeppo and Peckoms and stuff like that. They were just originally just Expedition Party that was going to go out and see what they could learn about the poneglyphs. And then the world government found out what they were doing, and then they were labeled pirates. Aokiji may be your father, he may not be. I just thought it's a slight fun theory to talk about, so I just figured I would. And it kind of goes along with the Father's Day theme from, a couple of days ago. So that's what I got for this video. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you think of another reason why that would work or why that wouldn't work, that's entirely up to you. He lets Robin go multiple times. He let her go as child, as in, like, he let her escape Ohara. He let her, let the Straw Hats leave Long Ring Longland. He let them, leave, Ennis Lobby. He could have very easily just, like, been at that party and then froze everyone at that party in the post-Ennis Lobby arc. And then, just froze everyone there and then just, like, captured all of them. If it was against what Garp wanted to do, just like, letting them go type of thing. He could have very easily done that, but he didn't. And, it could just be that he was like, oh, he thought of a reason as to not do it. It could just be he didn't want to do it because he doesn't want to see his own daughter get hurt. It's like he wanted her to come, he let her go, hoping that she could just be safe and on her own, but that didn't work, and then she ends up being on the run for 20 years. And then he eventually finds her, and then she's with this crew, and he's like, well, maybe there'll be a good crew for her. But then, that doesn't always work so well. But they did end up being a good crew for her, and he seems to be supportive of that. Which is a good thing, I would say. He keeps coming up with reasons to let her leave and let her escape, which I'm just like, I mean, like, Garp does that with Luffy to a degree, and he may have had to do that with, like, Ace a couple of times, when Ace first became a pirate, but it's also like, maybe we shouldn't, you're a Marine, you're supposed to catch the pirates. You're supposed to catch the quote-unquote bad guys. Yeah, there are horrible pirates out there, Blackbeard being one of them. Kaido, perfectly fine capturing Heather. Big Mom, yes, capture Big Mom. Some of her kids kind of fall more into the innocent category, mostly because they're either too young to have any form of an opinion on things, or to be able to determine what they want to do. And also, the kids were just kind of raised in that atmosphere. Not so much with Yamato, but, Yamato still wants to go off to be a pirate. That's the other thing. It's like most of Big Mom's kids, I don't care who their father is. We met Pound. Most of the other fathers are a lot of the same way as like Pound, of like, oh, they were this random person and everything. And we just go with Pound because we met Lola earlier, and then we're gonna, Chiffon's gonna be a big part of this arc, so we'll reveal her father. But like, we kind of want to know who Katakuri Daifuku and Oven's father is. Like, who was their father? Where, what else do we got there? Who's their father? And then, of course, we do want to kind of know who Yamato's mother is. Given the fact that Big Mom did say that she looked at Kaido as a little brother, maybe not so much in that time frame. Maybe Katakuri and such are not his kids. I doubt it's Whitebeard though. But could have been Rox was their father. It would have been in the same time frame that she was on the crew. We don't know. Or Shiki could be one of her kids' father. We don't know. But that's what we got there. As I said, I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye! And remember this, I am not your ally. If you do anything, I'm the enemy that will be the first to catch you.